Lucille Tenazas is the Henry Wolf Professor of Communication Design at Parsons School of Design in New York. Based in New York and San Francisco, her work is at the intersection of typography and linguistics, reflecting complex and poetic means of visual expression. Lucille was the national president of the American Institute of Graphic Arts, AIGA, or AIGA, from 1996 to 1998, was awarded the AIGA Medal in 2013 for her lifetime contribution to design practice and outstanding leadership in design education. Her personal journey from the Philippines, where she was born, to San Francisco, then to Cranbrook Academy of Art in Michigan, where she received her MFA in design and was the colleague of Leila Musfi at the time, to a year of living in Rome, Italy, combined with the collective experiences of living in the West and the East Coast of the United States, have had a profound effect on her work. Lucille has given lectures and conducted workshops in institutions within the United States, as well as in cities around the world. As a designer invited to conduct design workshops, her goal has been to approach the opportunity as a cultural observer, using the medium of design to address unique cultural situations and conditions. Please give a warm welcome to Lucille Tenazas.
I find it uncomfortable if I'm behind the podium, but can you hear me? Just in case I were to move around. Okay. Thank you, Yara, for the introduction. Some of you know that I was here in 2019 before COVID. It's like BC, you know, when I tell people BC before COVID. Okay, so now I don't know if this is going to
Too low.
Maybe too dark, yeah.
Okay. So, when I was part of the advisory committee that was invited to come here to provide some feedback into the plans of you generating a school of, or I guess the graduate program in design. Anyway, I'm going to start because I know I have some time here. I'm clocking myself at 40 minutes, more or less. But I'd like to begin with the introduction that Yara said, which is that I am the Henry Wolf Professor of Communication Design at Parsons in the School of Art, Media, and Technology. So who was Henry Wolf? A lot of people, I talk about this to my students because they don't know who Henry Wolf is, but he's an Austrian-American designer who I would consider the grandfather of American magazine design. So if you look at these examples of what he's done, when they were at its heyday. I mean, now if you look at magazines, they're all about personalities and celebrities. But Henry Wolf was one of those magazine designers who really looked at ideas and concepts. And these are some of the work that he's done for magazines like Esquire. Esquire is still around. Bazaar is still around. And then Visual Thinking is actually a book about his work, and Show is no longer around. Unless I think they sometimes do special issues. But Henry Wolf was teaching at Parsons many years ago, and so when he passed away, his estate gave a how can I say, a professorship. And so I am the first Henry Wolf professor. I have it until I leave, until I retire, whatever, that's our word. But otherwise, I hold that position. Okay. I thought I would think about, like, what would I title this presentation? And there are two words that I'm really interested in, you know, this idea of vital curriculum. So vital, meaning life, relating to what is personal, and the subtitle meaning crafting the personal in graphic design. And this is kind of an area that is contentious, I think, because when people think of graphic design, they think it has nothing to do with you as a person, that it is about the client and only about the client, but I think that it is a reciprocal engagement. And so I wanted to dissect that phrase, vital meaning life, it's essential, it's life-giving. Curriculum, what is it? You have a curriculum, so you deal with a structure or a course of study. Personal, it has to do with individual interests. And I think those are really crucial aspects of what design education is. And I feel that has been my goal, my philosophy as an educator. So I wanted to give you a brief timeline in one slide covering X number of years. I'm not going to talk about that. if you go on Google and you look at me in Wikipedia, which actually I had no idea somebody wrote about me, you will find out when I was born. But anyway, I grew up in the Philippines, in Manila. And that was my area where I spent formative years. I left for the United States in '79. I was in my mid-20s, and I decided to go to graduate school. But because Cranbrook rejected me twice, and my portfolio was just not good enough, I think, because I was working for a pharmaceutical company in Manila at the time. So my work was just full of, or my portfolio was full of labels for vitamins, ulcer brochures. I mean, who wants that for graduate school? So I decided to just go to another, change my tack, and go to San Francisco and get a second undergraduate degree, forgetting about graduate degree and deciding that I just want to go to the United States. My family is covering my expenses, and so of course, there's no internet. I go to the American Embassy, right, in Manila, and the first brochure I see for design schools, art and design schools, was California College of the Arts and Crafts, and that's where I ended up, in San Francisco. But then my aunt, who emigrated to the United States in the 60s, who's a doctor, I told her, I was rejected by Cranbrook twice. She said, Cranbrook, I mean, she's a doctor, she doesn't really know what this is, design and art. Well, she does, but she said, oh, Cranbrook, your uncle plays tennis there. Is there an art school there? And I said, yeah, but I didn't get in. Okay, so she said, okay, well, go to another school and we'll pay for everything. We'll cover your expenses. And the reason is that my father, being the oldest of 8, my father died when I was 16. He was 47. And so when my father passed away, my aunt, because she was the youngest, my father was the oldest of 8, you can imagine the age difference makes my father kind of like her father, And so when my father died, she was devastated, and she could not return to the Philippines for his funeral. And so she came back to the Philippines for the first time after being away for 10 years. And she set me down, and I'm one of 6 children. And she said, I will never be able to repay your father for what he has done for me. But if you ever want to come to the United States to go to graduate school, I will take care of it. And that was the gift that she gave me, because it was a reciprocal gift, that my father had helped her, and now she was paying it forward for me. And so my mother set me down and said, did you hear that? Did you hear what she said? I said, yeah, so? I just graduated from college, I'm having a good time, living at home, partying, whatever. And she said, she did not offer it to anybody else, but she offered it to you. So what are you going to do about that? And so in my culture, I think this is normal. When I talk about this story with my other friends in America, they said, oh my God, Lucille, at 18, I was told to leave. I was told to get a job. You're out of the house. I said, no, that's not true in my country. In my culture, you help each other. Whatever it takes, and education is a key part of that. And so I ended up visiting her over Christmas in Michigan. And so I thought, hey, might as well bring my portfolio. She doesn't, at least she knows where her money's going. And so she said, okay, I'm in this hospital, spend the whole day at this Detroit Institute of Arts, this museum, spend the whole day there. I drop you off in the morning, pick you up in the afternoon. And so I go to the basement to use a payphone. No cell phones, remember. I used the payphone. I call Kathy McCoy at Cranbrook between Christmas and New Year. And she answers the phone. And I said, hi, I don't know if you remember me. I applied a couple of years ago, but I didn't get in. I'm actually in school in San Francisco now. And I'm visiting. I'm just wondering if you have time to see my work. And she said, yeah, why not? Come over. Okay, I show her my work, and she said, this is amazing work. When did you do this? I said, in San Francisco, the last 6 months. You mean you've only been in this country 6 months? And this is the work you've done? I said, yeah. Okay, this is what I can offer you. You can either return here in 3 weeks when school term resumes in the spring, or you can come back in September. Okay, now remember, this is between Christmas and New Year. Or you can come back in September, and you have a space. And I looked at her and I said, but I'm not applying to graduate school. I'm only here for Christmas. Oh, okay. Why don't you think about it? And so my aunt picks me up and she says, what happened? She offered me a place in the program. And she said, well, go ahead, take it. Well, what about my apartment? I'm staying with this family in California. I mean, I have my stuff, my books. And she said, you've been here 6 months. What did you accumulate? Books. I go to like garage sales, art supplies. Okay, tell your friends to ship it. This is my pragmatic doctor aunt. And I said, what about my clothes? Oh, first of all, I said, what about my round trip ticket? Oh, we get a refund for that. And what about my clothes? She said, you don't have winter clothes. Michigan, this is winter. We'll go to the mall tomorrow, no big deal. So I did not return to San Francisco until 3 years later, because I decided to stay in Michigan and go to Cranbrook, which is where Layla and I met in 1980. Okay, so when you graduate from a school, always the thing that people want to know is, hey, where should I go to school? Or where should I go to work? Well, should I go to New York? I said, yeah, you should go to New York. Well, is it scary? I said, you have to go to a place that pushes you over the edge. And New York does that for you. Because then you know what your capacity is for endurance. And if you're young, you have that capacity. So go to New York. And it will push you over the edge. And it did me. So I was there for 3 years. I went to 65 interviews. And I only got my job offer at the number 66. Number 61 was Michael Beirut, who is now, of course, at Pentagram. And he told me, hey, Lucille, Massimo would love to see your work. Okay, great. Schedule an appointment for me. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, so I schedule an appointment with Massimo, or Michael does. And then a few days before my appointment, Michael calls me and he said, Lucille, so sorry. Massimo can't make the appointment. I said, well, that's too bad. Oh, well, maybe another time. So, of course, I was disappointed. Years and years later, I'm the type of person, at the time, I didn't have a Xerox machine. I had carbon copies. So I would carbon copy my letter to my friends at Cranbrook, because I was already in New York. And so I would carbon copy it because I thought, I didn't want to repeat myself, right? Didn't want to make that was my copy of my letter. And I came across this letter just a few years ago, and it said, I was so disappointed when Massimo Vignelli canceled the appointment when he found out that I went to Cranbrook. And that was the goal. So Massimo has been quoted many times that he considers Cranbrook the most dangerous school in America. Because, we don't have to tell you that. You have your example here. So anyway, after that, my teachers, who did not see me for 3 years, right, in San Francisco, said, Lucille, you left us. You did not return. And I said, yeah, I know, but I had this opportunity at Cranbrook. And then, of course, I go to New York, get a job. He said, okay, my teacher, Michael Vanderbilt, says, you have to come back here. Because what you're doing in terms of design and typography will benefit our students. So you better come back. And I said, well, is that my job? Like, oh, part-time. I said, well, how much? Well, don't worry about it. We'll give you freelance work. No, don't, no big deal. Part-time teachers, okay, how much do I make? It's like, I don't know, it's some stupid amount. I don't remember now. But Michael assured me that he would give me work, throw some bones at me, and say, hey, I can't do this project, why don't you do it? So that was what happened. So I established my office in San Francisco in 1985. And that was where I began my practice. And for the next 20 years, I had my studio, I taught. I met my husband, a photographer, and then started a family. I have 2 sons who are now 25 and 28. So that was, to me, I would say, the foundation of my life, when your family becomes like the unit, and what that does to you, in terms of your life trajectory. But then my husband, who's, as I said, a photographer and an artist, was given a fellowship at the American Academy in Rome, or L'Accademia Americana. And some of these, there's a there's a German academy, there's a French academy at the Palazzo Medici. And so it was an amazing year for us because 30 Americans are selected every year to go to Rome, and they stay for a year. So if you're an artist, you're a musician, you're a poet, you're an architect, scholar on Italian studies, all these disciplines, if you go to the American Academy in Rome website, you'll see it. Thousands of people apply, and only 30 people get selected. And those 30 people are given a studio, an apartment, and a stipend for 1 year. So it was an amazing year. So when people tell me, what did you think of Rome? You're a graphic designer, you're a contemporary designer. Shouldn't you have been in Milan? Wasn't Milan the inspiration, not Rome? And I realized that when you're in Rome, some of you have been to Rome, I know, that the influence of a city that can actually look at ancient, medieval, every conceivable time, period in history, art, politics, everything. When you look at a city like Rome, where it can actually be sitting, any building, any establishment can be next to a building that is contemporary. For some reason, in Rome, they work. It doesn't work in a lot of cities when you combine these different eras, but they got it. The Italians got it, or they get it. So, of course, being in Europe, it becomes more like this sort of fluid, mobility of moving around a continent, and with cheap airfares at the time, EasyJet, Ryanair, all of those. You could go to London, you could go to Paris, and it would be like 25 euro or something. And we took advantage of that. And so for my two sons, of course, they were upset that we left San Francisco, and we told them, you know what? You don't have a choice, really, because you're only 9 and 11. But when you're 18, you can go wherever you want. But for now, you stay with us. So they are grateful for that period. And now, they're each doing work that is, in fact, very international in its own way. And then, 2006, instead of going back to San Francisco, we decided to go to Rome. So we go to New York for the second time. So because my husband and I was also in New York in the early 80s, we didn't know each other, and it turns out we returned to the scene 20 years later. So that collapses the biography. So I thought I'd start with my personal story. I'm from the Philippines, as Yara mentioned. And the Philippines, when I was doing something for Emigre magazine many, many years ago, what's the guy's name who publishes Emigre? Rudy Vanderland. So Rudy chose several international designers and said, okay, can you design 2 pages that talk about your cultural stereotypes? So this was one of my pages, and I realized the metaphor of my country can be dissected in the fact that it is made up of 7,000 islands. Maybe there are only a few letters here that make up the Philippines, but the sort of distribution of population had been Christianized, if you will, because the Spanish colonized my country for 300 years. So I look at religion as this constricting force that it was implanted into my culture and into my mindset. So we are the only Catholic country in Southeast Asia. So these statistics will tell you what kind of, in numbers, in figures, 7,100 islands plus. There are 300 years of Spanish rule, and it affected us, of course, with the language. We have a lot of Spanish words. Catholicism, religion, we are 90% Catholic. 50 years of American rule came in 1899 to free us from the Spanish. But because their influence was so pervasive, English is actually the lingua franca of my country. So if you want to go to any other province in the north, south, out of those 7,000 islands, the only way you could be understood is if you speak English. Not in the national language, because it's only concentrated in Manila, but then beyond that, everybody has been taught English since kindergarten. So that's the only way you can communicate. But on top of those languages, on top of those figures, there are also 120 dialects. So just imagine, those islands speak a particular language, so you cannot be understood. If I'm from the north going to the south, there's just no way you'll be understood. So I want to talk about the genesis of my name, Tenazas, okay? It's pronounced, if you were Castilian Spanish, Tenazas, because Philip II had a lisp. And so when his government minions went to my country, any Z, any was pronounced with a TH, right? Okay, so in Spanish, tenazas means tongs or pincers. Alicates, pliers, and they're the heavy-duty ones that look like this. They're not like your simple pliers, okay? They're heavy-duty. Okay, so they're the ones, as it turns out, the reason we were called tenazas is my ancestor was a blacksmith. I don't know what you call blacksmith in Arabic, but he was hanging on to his, in these coals and fire, and the Spanish were walking around and said, "Hey, you're a tenazas, because you're holding on to these tenazas." So, many years ago, I was on the international jury of a competition in Spain, right, in Madrid. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna do automatic translation on this page. I can tell. So of course, what did this show? Lucille Tenazas. So I knew I was right. Okay, so the system that my family, and I didn't know this, that my father, Audines, was a civil engineer. So you can tell, he's the left brain man. My mother was a history teacher, and so she's the right brain humanities person. So in my family, we have STEM, or STEAM. So anyway, my father wanted his children to have names, initial names, beginning with the letters of my parents. So my mother wanted all the girls to be beginning with L, and all the boys beginning with A. Okay, I mean, as you can see. So I didn't know this system, and then Tenazas, right? Tenazas has 7 letters. And in my country, maybe in your culture too, 7 is lucky, right? Lucky 7? Okay, so my father said, I'm only gonna choose names that have 7 letters. 7 and 7. Tenazas is set, can't change that. So, but the first name can be invented. Okay, so Lynn Marie, my sister, oldest sister, is Marilyn transposed. Okay, Lucille, you know me, I'm here. Okay, then my 3 brothers. So when my sister was born, Lynette, I was 13, and my father said, okay, all the older kids, you help us come up with a name for your sister, but on 2 conditions. Beginning with L, 7 letters. And we're like, I'm like 13. I said, Linda? L-I-N, oh, no, can't work. That's 5 letters. Lavinia, L-A-V-I-N, oh, that's 7. No. So my father comes up with Lynette. And so, as you can see, all the girls' names are Western names, and all the boys' names are Spanish names. So, what does that mean? I don't know. My father, as it turns out, had a naming system and was a designer in his own mind. Being an engineer, everything had to be planned. But then, this thing is totally unplanned. The first 3 are right-handed, and the last 3 are left-handed. So when my sister Lynette was showing a predisposition to use her left, my father at that point was getting fed up with another child who was a lefty. And again, in my culture, left is like associated with the devil. A lot of creative people are left-handed, actually. I think you know that. So a lot of people I hired in my office were left-handed. And then even in Italian, the word left is sinistra, which is sinister. Why is that? Who knows? So by the time my sister started using her hand, my father would just grab the pencil and force her to use her right. So my sister is ambidextrous, which is the best thing my father ever did. Okay, so as I was introduced, I teach at 2 schools. My connection is with these 2 schools. In San Francisco, I was with California College of Arts and Crafts, where I was for 20 years. And then in New York at Parsons, where I am now from 2008. Now I show this as a kind of, what's the security thing? Okay. So what I show this because in San Francisco, it was a former bus depot. So all the classrooms were like, you have to reach them by running. It's horizontal. But in New York, it's vertical. So there is that kind of change in that. So you have to wait forever in front of the elevator to just go up to your office. So a lot of people are just climbing up the stairs. But this one shows the sort of the geography of those two schools.
Just click on the image, I think, on it out.
Okay. So I thought I'd just show a few projects. My students saw some of these, but I wanted to talk about that vital curriculum I was talking about earlier and the idea of authorship. That I think it's important because when you are working for other people, being the voice or filter for a client, it's important to not lose your voice so that you are able to stand head to head with them. And they're not seeing you as a service. They're looking at you as an equal intellectual, that somebody that they can consider as an equal with them. So one of the projects I've done is this project called The Designer as a Cultural Nomad, where I give students a cardinal direction. Tell them to go north using Union Square in the middle there as the starting point because Parsons is near there, west, south, and east. And the students are always kind of confused, because it's the first project I give and they say, what do you want us to do? I said, I want you to observe, walk closely, walk and slowly, walk at different times of the day, do your research, and then find out if there's a design problem or a design issue within that trajectory. So many of these projects now have been out there. A student of mine, for example, decided she was not from New York. She decided every day she would open the map of New York and she would walk a letter from the map. So there are 26 letters, as you can see here, all parts of New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Harlem, whatever. Wherever she felt that she could create that letter and walk it and then document it with, through a series of this little book. So you can imagine there are 26 of these books that document her journey, her conversations, the trash that she picked up, places she went to, etc. Okay. One thing that I like to do is to play with my students, kind of ability to do a chance operation. So I have 2 bags in my class. One is a bag of adjectives. So you see all these words: comic, concrete, heroic, authentic. And then another bag of nouns: gender, instinct, landscape, affair. And then so they get a word from each bag, and I said, do not open the papers. When you sit down, everybody sit down, now you read it. What do you have? Oh, I have simultaneous affair. What's that? What does that mean? So I'm interested in what they can do when the 2 words that have no connection whatsoever, that have never had any connection, in their own way, they have their own meanings. You know what the meaning of urban is. You know what the meaning of household is. But when you start looking at the adjective, one way impersonator, what does that mean? So you now can invent the meaning of that because that becomes the 3rd meaning and you have to design something based on that idea. So I like playing with chance because that's what life is about. Okay, so like some of the workshops I've given, for example, this was in Lugano in Switzerland at a school there. And since I'm only there for a few days, sometimes a week, the longest is a week, but in this case, for example, I'm here at AUB for 2 days. So this student, I said, I'm interested in knowing about your culture. What is your personal story? What's your personal history? So this woman said, I'm Swiss, okay, but I said, Switzerland is a small country, but for a small country, it has many different cultural influences. In the south, it's Italian. On the west, it's French. On the east, it's German. And then you have Romansh, which is the local indigenous group. And I said, so you're obviously half and half, right? Yeah, I'm 50%. 50% German Swiss and 50% Italian Swiss. Okay, now visualize that for me. So she comes back with the Swiss cross right in the middle. Of course, that's like the emblematic, iconic symbol of Switzerland. And so I said, biologically you're 50-50, but psychologically, where are you? Put yourself and locate yourself based on your affinity to the culture that each of your parents give you. And you can tell where her priority is. I'm not going to tell you. The Italian side, of course, is on the right-hand side. The German side is on the left. And so where does the weight go? It's not 50-50 anymore. 2/3 and 1/3. Okay, here's a student who tells me, you know, Lucille, I just want to be, I just have this amazing interest for beaches. And Switzerland is an inland. And I said, yeah, well, you know, you have a lot of water here. You have a lot of lakes, right? Yeah, but I want to be in the Mediterranean. I wish my country was in the Mediterranean. So she pulls Switzerland out of Europe and says, idealmente, meaning ideally, I would like my country to be in the middle of the Mediterranean, which is what she's showing. So there's Switzerland at the bottom right, floating in the Mediterranean. All, of course, hypothetical. Okay, so let me go now to my own work, which is about this magazine that I designed. This is a prototype for a magazine for San Francisco. 7x7 is the geometric, geographic dimension of San Francisco. It's 7x7 square miles. So you can see that peninsula jutting out there. It's a square. So I thought it was really interesting when the publishers came to me and they said, can you design our magazine? And I said, what's the name of it? Frisco, San Fran, SF? No, it's 7x7. And I thought, I like that. I like the mathematical formula of the name of a magazine based on its dimensions. So these were some of my proposals, okay? And I had this idea that the first issue, maiden issue, was not going to be in color. I said, let's just do it black and white to be different. They said, oh, you know, Lucille, nobody's going to buy this. You know, people like punch, color. And I said, well, this all makes sense. You have editorially 7 stories on the cover, so 7x7, right? So you can count the stories 7x7. And then on top of that, I thought, well, you know what? We're so used to seeing covers that are just faces. What if you show the back of somebody? You know, so it's almost like as if you were telling them, come on over and follow me to San Francisco. Of course, the story about this is that I did not get the job. I got the job, but they did not choose my design because they said, you know, Lucille, it's just too sophisticated. And then I realized, you know what, it's too bad. We are not the right fit. So even as I thought, okay, it was disappointing, but at the same time, I show this work. I did this in 2000. It is 22 years old. And even now, I look at this and I said, you missed the boat. You could have done this, but you didn't. If you go to San Francisco, you'll still see 7x7, and they copied some of my fonts, but never, ever in this kind of like, you know, monolithic way, crossing across the cover. Okay, some of the work that I've done, and as you can see here, I'll show a series of this work that is very much about complexity and layering. This was a poster on Dutch graphic design that Kathy McCoy gave in San Francisco, using the stamp as the kind of focus, foundational thing, and I built on top of it. I had, you know, an image by Rembrandt, you know, so it was really this combination of Dutch but modern. And then I did this poster, a graduate poster for CCAC, which was in a way a calendar of events. You know, so everything was, there were things happening on every day, and 1111 was the address of the building. So I used that as a kind of signal that there are 4 programs: design, writing, fine arts, and visual criticism. So you can see those 4 numbers as a way to indicate that there were 4 programs. Okay, so after doing these many things where it's just very complicated, very complex, which I love doing, and it's easy for me to do that. The more complicated, the better for me. I can do it with my eyes closed. And then I met my husband, who's a photographer, and he said, you know, I don't like type on my photographs. And I said, I like this image of this shrouded image. It's very mysterious. And I want to use it for this architecture poster. And he said, you know, I'm sorry. There's a lot of type that you're doing. You just have to lay off. And I said, okay, this is the challenge. It's not colored. It's not overlaid with information and collage. And so I thought, I'm going to use this image because it is this ambiguous, mysterious image. and to talk about architecture. So the words around it are architectural. So in the middle, you see the word site, tangent on top, circumnavigate on the right, contiguous on the left, and then at the bottom, proximity. So what is architectural about this? You know, people say, it's not a building, right? I said, well, that's the idea. It's a call for ideas about what architecture can be beyond the built form, like conceptual architecture, unbuilt architecture, idea architecture. So this is the way it looks in the poster, with all the type around it. And I told my husband, I said, maybe I can just put like one word in the middle. And he allowed me to do that. But that was a lesson for me, to be able to restrain myself and respect the integrity of a photograph, but still give it complexity. And the complexity shows up in the fact that the image is open to interpretation. So the second year, I took this, this was a picture he did, and I said, can I use another photograph? He said, are you putting type on top of it? And I said, yeah, well, you know, on the side a little bit. I like this image because my husband was part of an archaeological dig in Egypt, in upriver or whatever, southern part by the Sudan. And so this was the dig, archaeological excavation that was organized by Yale and the University of Pennsylvania. So he was the photographer for them. And what's interesting is they come in the winter, of course, they do their research, unearth artifacts, and then at the end of the dig, 3 months later, they cover it back with sand and then put these stones. I thought, this is so primeval. You know, with all the high-tech stuff, why can't you just like build something on top of it? And this was, I thought, so provocative, and it worked with the context of replacement, displacement, etc. That what is underneath and what is still to be unearthed. So, as Yara said, I'm really interested in linguistics and language because of my history from a country that speaks thousands, hundreds of dialects, and being bilingual. So for me, it comes naturally. Okay, even with this, the cover of a catalog for Cranbrook on fiber. It was a kind of a retrospective of the fiber program covering 25 years, maybe. What is that? How many years is that? And on the right there, it's called Hot House. And Cranbrook is, in a way, a where you can play, you can have ideas, generate ideas. And so the image on the right is by this American artist, Nick Cave. You may know his work, and he's famous for his sound suits that he is fully embellishes, and he's inside those suits. Okay, I'm just going to go through this. These are quickly posters for the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art on their architectural lecture series. And what I like about this challenge is that you're not, you know, there's several speakers here, as you can see there in the middle, but the mandate for me, or the brief, is to not highlight any one architect, but really talk about ideas and concepts. But when I saw this building, this is a fisherman's museum in Norway, and I thought, yeah, this is very modern. It's so cube-like, you know, it juts out of this promontory. And I said, you know what, I'm going to use this image, even if it refers to that one architect, Craig Dykers, and the name of the studio is Noheda, number 4. This one was more, of course, no built form, but it's purely about the language of architecture, the visuals of architecture, a floor plan, etc. Okay, likewise with this was an exhibition catalog called Potent Present at CCA by the collection of this couple, Kent and Vicki Logan. And then they only had 13 artists in this book. And so each artist had a page, had a description by the curator. And so I was really keen on replicating in some way the text of that is kind of echoing the image that is shown. Likewise with this, these are just, you know, again, I'm back to fragmentation, right? This is a logo for a gallery, a museum in Seattle. This is part of the University of Washington, and they had a new gallery called the Henry Art Gallery. And so when I was looking at the Henry, it's a contemporary museum. So I had this idea of a big H, and I thought, how can I make the H animated? You know, so that they're like floating H's. Henry is like a father, you know, like Henry Fonda or something. So I thought I want to make this more, how can I say, more friendly, so that the big H, which is so symmetrical, can be loosened up, or it can be minimized, its power. I'm just going to go through this quickly. This is for an architect in San Francisco. Heckscher Museum of Art is a museum in Long Island, New York. So what's interesting with this is, the reason I show this is they have this amazing like front entrance arch, which is so Beaux-Arts, and I just said, you know, how can I make this modern? You know, I can't shake the architecture component because it's right there, but at least I was able to do things with it, at least in the design of the materials that I did, by showing some of the work and then also doing something more contemporary to the treatment. And then the logo is a square, so it makes sense. This was their inaugural show by, which is called To Infinity and Beyond, Mathematics and in Contemporary Art. And so there's this amazing architect, I mentioned this to my students earlier, Hiroshi Sugimoto, who does this amazing visual representations of geometric formulas. So if you look him up and just look up these shapes, these are in 3D. These are volumetric shapes that are carved. I show this because I'm interested in translation. And I was asked to design typography of a library wall. You know, and I said, who are the people who live here? Oh, there's like a lot of Asians, Hispanics, you know, of course, Americans, English speaking. And I said, you know, what I want to do is I want to show, in my own way as a designer, I want to show how language can be translated. So on the left, you see William Carlos Williams's poem, The Red Wheelbarrow. And then in the middle is Pablo Neruda's poem of Ode to the Things. In this case, Ode to an Onion, I think it is. So if you look closely, and then there's a haiku, Japanese on the right there. When I talk to my students, if they're from a different culture, and I tell them, do not forget your language. But you know, how am I going to use it? Here's English, and then here's this, you know, my language. I said, there is a way for the two to coexist. And I show this as an example, and then in detail, if you look at this, the Spanish and the English are like budding together, but they're different colors, right? So there we go. That's my 40 minutes. We started late? Okay, I get, what, 5 more minutes? Okay, but you can see here that as an educator, right, this is foremost in my mind. I am my mother's daughter. So in my mind, how can I teach you? Even if I'm not a linguist, I'm not a translator, but I can give examples of how language can be perceived and translated in a different way. So I show this as that example. So this one is a 2-sided poster I did for the School of Constructed Environments at Parsons, which consists of product design, lighting design, architecture, and interior design. So the dean of that program said, you know, Lucille, we need a recruitment poster, and you need to include faculty work, student work. I said, okay, on the front, I'm going to show projects. And then in the back, it's the ghost of those projects. So when you see them together, you know, you see one side, I don't even call it front and back. I just say one side has the poetic, which is the one on the right, it's the School of Constructed Environments. And then on the left, it's the more pragmatic. That's where you can find the website, that's where you can find all the information, blah, blah. So when this was exhibited, it was hanging in the middle of the room, suspended, so that you can see front and back. And it's actually, the paper is like Bible paper, it's very thin. So it's translucent. Okay, so I have been fascinated by this idea of asemic writing. Okay, and what is asemic writing? Asemic means it's the opposite of semantic, meaning it has no meaning. It has no specific semantic content, but it has the smallest hint of a meaning. So the reason I bring this up is that I saw this, and I thought, this looks like typography, but does it mean anything? So this is by the Argentinian artist on the right, Mirtha Dermisage. And she had an exhibit at MoMA a few years ago. And then I saw this woman's work, Maria Lai, in Rome. When I saw her name, I thought she was Chinese. And then somebody said, oh, no, no, she's from Sardinia. I said, yeah, people in Sardinia, it's like a different country. And I thought, what is she about? Well, this is the work that I saw. And I thought, what is this? It's cloth, right? It's what they call libri cuciti, meaning sewn books. So she was actually sewing these books with the threads extended out, right? There are hundreds of these that exist in the world. Okay, and some of them are in a collection near my town in the Hudson Valley. It's called Magazzino. If you ever get a chance to go to New York, go up on the train on the Hudson Valley and go to this place called Magazzino, and they have amazing collection of her work. But I saw these books in Rome. So I immediately started to think, she reminds me of that work by, Misa de Hermitage. What does it mean anything? What is this? Right? Okay, look her up. You'll find her work online. She was not known as much in the US. Now she passed away, obviously, in 2013. But now she's more recognized. She was in the Venice Biennale a few years ago. So I met the curator in Magazzino, and I said, so you have a collection of Maria Lai's work? And they said, yeah. Well, in 2016, I was on my sabbatical. I told my husband, I said, Richard, I think we have to go to Sardinia and visit this woman's place. Like, what kind of landscape allows this person to come up with this body of work? And she lived in Rome. She died in Rome, but she grew up in Sardinia, in Ulasai. And so I decided to go to Rome. We went to Rome. We landed from Rome, drove all the way south near Cagliari. And then we're staying at this hotel, like 2-star hotel. So this guy checks us in. I said, hi, I'm checking in. And this guy says, hey, are you here for mountain climbing? No. Yeah, well, this place is famous. Look at all, this is like mountain ranges here. And people are going up, and they have zooming up and down. What's the word for that? I forget now. And I said, no, actually, I'm here because I'm interested in this artist, Maria Lai. And this guy looks at me and he says, you're kidding. I said, why? This building is owned by her brother. So how does one plan that? Do you plan, like if you're going on, in Wikipedia or Expedia, I guess, they're looking at a hotel in a place you've never been to, and then you land in a place that actually has a familial connection with the artist you want to know about? This is my story, and I call that Kismet. So look at this. So it made me think about materiality in a different way. I design books, but is this book design? It is book design. It doesn't have any meaning. It's asemic. Okay, so when I went to Rome, I'm an artist also. So I started to discover my own hand. I thought, I'm going to just draw, make collages, cut pieces of paper. And the reason I got into typography is that I was a very good calligrapher when I was in grade school. I was writing diplomas. I'm the one who has very good handwriting. People always say, who did this? Can you write the diplomas names, awarded to? And I was always the artist of choice. So that's how I discovered form. That I became so acutely conscious of letter form because of my handwriting and typography and calligraphy. So as you can see here, these are all just done by hand, right? And then this is something I did using my portrait when I was 16. And even the word possible, that's hand drawn. And I was looking at my colored pencils and I thought, Lucille, your students don't know how to do this anymore. I show this to them and they're like, you didn't do this on the computer? I said, who did it? They say. I said, right here, right here. So don't forget, those hands are what make it. So I went to Italy, again, this is now my 6-year sabbatical, and I went to this letterpress place called Tipoteca Italiana Fondazione. And it is north of Venice, about half an hour, 40 minutes. I went there in it's an old church, right there, on the right. I was there in 2016 as part of a group of designers, artists, who wanted to experiment with letterpress for a week. It's just a week, right? I've never done letterpress. I know what it is. I love what it feels like. I like how it touches. So I thought, why not? And there's this guy, Daniele, who we were all given projects, right? So here I am in front of that letterpress in 2019. So I thought, you know what? I'm going back. So I went back in September. And in September, I decided to work on words that define my work because I've been working on my monograph for years now. So I decided to come up with words that are, kind of like characteristic of my ideas. So here's my workspace. There's laptop somewhere, right? But this is what I'm doing. I'm cutting and pasting. I have the triangle. I have like cutting and pasting. So I just want to show you the process because this is what I did. My work has a lot to do with metaphor. And so I'm like having this guy do a proof and then I'm cutting and pasting. And it's like, this is like Cranbrook all over again. I was like cutting and pasting, and when I show this to my students, they say, you could do that in Photoshop. Yeah, and you can do that also in like Illustrator. Yeah, I said, yeah. But my hand is not touching that thing, and I wanted to touch that thing. So initially I used the word, I had, like, of course, you had this place, Tipoteca, has thousands and thousands of metal type and wood type. If you just want to be inspired, go to Cornuda, which is the name of this place, and they do tours. They give tours for €5. €5, how do you beat that? And then when I told Sandro, the manager, I said, Sandro, remember, I was here 3 years ago. I'd like to come back, but I don't want to come back with a group. I just want to come for myself. How much would you charge me if I play for a whole week? Oh, 5 days? 500 euro. What, a day? No, a week. €500 is like $500. You're there for 5 solid days, accessing their hundreds, thousands of fonts. And so I want to show you even the word form. Okay, so I had the word form, but then I was opening these drawers and I saw, oh, I like this reverse O. I like this reverse M. And so before I left, I was still in the U.S., I was like doing this digitally. I said, I want to use metaphor. And so this was my digital sketch. But you can see this is what happened when I was there. So my brain was going, like, again, thinking. Look at it from before. This is mathematical, Futura, whatever. But then when you're there, it's like, there's no Futura. There's some Futura, but not the whole thing. And then I used the word frame. So look at this. I would not have come up with this design if I did not see those 2 big Fs. Likewise. So this is what it looks like. So people are trying to read it. What is a F? Oh, frame. So even the back-to-back letters in 2 different colors. If you squint, you'll read the black. So Kismet. Kismet is the word that defines my biography. That's why I want to use Kismet in the first chapter of my book. Because what does Kismet mean? It's a Turkish word meaning it's meant to be. Right? Not the same as serendipity. The serendipity is chance with positive results. But Kismet was out there, up there, it was meant to be. So I was playing with all of these typography, all caps. I was looking at the word biography. I was looking at Kismet on top of the cap. But then, this is my sketch. Before I got there, right? I'm playing with these 3 words, destiny, fate, Kismet. And then what did I do? I opened these drawers, and this is what I found. So no more lines. I don't care about the lines. No more 2 colors on Kismet. Instead, I saw these 2 nice Ks. And when you're there, you just have to listen. You just have to listen to these letters, or you're opening drawers and like, you're talking to me, right? And I need to do something. And this one was another one. Look at this visual verbal. When I was moving those V's around, that's why there's Scotch tape there. And then my master printer, Daniele, the guy you saw in the picture, was the one measuring it. He said, okay, Lucille, where do you want me to put this? Is this in the middle? Is the eye of visual supposed to be touching and then the dot is outside? Is that how you want it? I said, yeah, do it. Follow my sketch. Lastly, transparency. Open. Okay, this is the cover. Now, can you read it? So this design would not have happened. I designed this on the spot when I was at Typoteca, because I had to look at type that was reversed and flopped. And so when I saw this, I just thought, I don't care if you can't read it. I read it. It's fine. So on the front, it's my name. On the back, it's designer. Okay, there we are at this last trip. Daniela is there again. I told them, I will come back here like it is a pilgrimage, because it is for my soul. I will come here every year, and the best thing is that across the street, owned by the printing press, is a 5-star restaurant, and you go there and it's only €15 for the complete three-course lunch with wine. Okay,
Wow.
and it's the best wine ever. So there's Daniele on the right, and then his son Leonardo, who is the manager, on the left. Okay, then here I'm going to show you what is this. I like this. I met a woman who was like a master embroiderer, and I looked at her catalog and I said, "What are these?" She said, "Oh, there's like, examples of embroidery." So the one on the left is what? It's the back. So I looked at it and I thought, I actually like the one that's messy, which is this part. And because I like process, because I like to show how things are made, because I like craft. In fact, I am on the national board of the American Craft Council. So for me to look at craft in a way that encompasses ceramics, glass, and then digital craft, like CNC machines and 3D printing, all of those to me are craft. So I want to getting close to this, and I mentioned this to my students earlier. I graduated from Cranbrook in 1982. It is now 2023, so I have been away from school for 41 years. So look at my hair. So now it's 2023, and some of you seniors are going to graduate in 41 years. That will be 2064. I will be dead by then. But you would still be designers because, like me, you are relevant. You try to make things relevant and last long. So what does it mean to have relevance and longevity? So that 40 years later, the projects I showed you from Cranbrook, from California 20 years ago, still are relevant. That there is an ongoing self-reflection of what you do, so that you're not stuck in another time. And that's really important. So who's this guy? This is a Chinese artist named Liu Bolin, and he's called the Invisible Man. And all his work, if you look it up, has to do with replicating the background on his person. So you'll see him against like cell phones, whatever. In this case, we have lost the humanity that we would like because we have given up, to technology. And so this to me epitomizes our dependence on technology. So my teacher, Catherine McCoy, as well as Layla's, said this to us, that designers who design like machines will be replaced by machines. Because it is not the digital, but the intuitive, and not the measurable, but the poetic. Not the mechanical, but the sensual that humanizes design. And so I leave you with that. So dear Kathy, same with Layla, we will never turn our backs on what humanizes design. So thank you. 7:04.
I
So
have
are
the
there
mic
questions?
if anyone wants to ask questions. Abe, you want to start?
Oh, you have a burning question? Okay, I'm gonna leave this on.
Yeah, leave it. Sorry, yeah. Hockey on?
Right.
Yeah. Put it on. Yeah.
Hi again. I wanted to ask, when the R word does come around again, do you think you'd go back to Rome?
Oh, R for me means refocus.
I like that.
So when people say, "Hey, Lucille, you're past retirement age, right?" Thank God we're in a field that has no retirement age.
Yes.
Right? Who told you to retire? Nobody. We have professors at the new school who are in their 70s and they are sharp as hell. Thank God We are educators and designers, and I am not forced to do the R word. So I don't know where I want to be. I'm like this cultural nomad, right? You know, if I left my country when I was 25, that means I can live anywhere. So my husband and I think it's Madrid, because they are very hospitable to old people there. You see old people everywhere. I mean, they're crossing the streets, you know, when we go to Madrid and we go to a cafe and I'm looking, you know, I don't know, in Barcelona, for example, I'm walking and I said, hey, there are a lot of old women in that cafe. That means it's good. Because these women know what good food tastes like. So let's go in there. So, answer your question. I have no date in mind. As long as my brain is intact.
Who wants to ask questions?
Go ahead.
Zana?
Thank you, Lucille. This was, okay, I hit the microphone. Can you hear me? Yes. I have a question. Do you have thoughts on the cultural differences within design and layout that are not just linguistic? So how the different cultural influences you play with have visual specificities and not just linguistic ones.
So you mean visual as opposed to language, right? Because I look at language also as a visual.
Yeah, I meant
Right.
sorry, I meant not just
Like image.
meaning and I meant
Image, yeah.
layout differences. I meant aesthetic sensibilities that might be different from, you know, the Philippines to
Yeah.
Italy to the States. Like, do you have thoughts on this?
Well, I'm very open to materiality. I think that's what it is. There is such a phrase as material intelligence by this man, Glenn Adamson, who is a curator and writer, and he used to be the director of MAD, which is in New York, the Museum of Art and Design, right? So when I tell my students, you know, I'm interested in like what you think about materiality, you know, because we are so all our knowledge is mediated by technology, and so I'd like for them to explore something else. So that project that I gave about North, South, East, West, you know, my students come from all over the world. In fact, in my class right now, I only have one American out of 8. I have 2 people from Japan, 1 from Taiwan, 1 from Korea, 1 from Indonesia, and 1 from India. So, you know, when they, you know, and if you're a design educator and you know, they come to the US, right? So the first thing they expect is like, I want to work in a Western model. You know, turn my back on my culture. And I said, well, I did that too at the beginning. But then I encouraged them to bring aspects of their culture, whatever it is. It could be popular culture. It could be craft culture. It could be anything that, you know, brings their attention to what visuality and linguistics are, or visuality and materiality. Let's put it that way. So, you know, I encourage them, you know, when one of my projects is, I tell them, bring me 20 images, something that you've taken, or even from the internet. Lay out the 20 right here, so they have no connection, right? Just like my adjectives and nouns. And then I say, choose 10 out of the 20, and like, this is gonna be hard, 10, and what do you want us to do with it? I said, I want you to create a thread. It could be anything. It could be anything. It could be about food. Maybe. It could be about, you know, a person, whatever. So what happens then in a process like that is that there is no hierarchy for what visuality means. Because they're confronted with chance and they have to make sense of something that there was no meaning attached to. And so it's about respecting the possibility of what visual means. So it doesn't, you know, like one of my students from India, she said, you know, Lucille, I miss, you know, I'm from Hyderabad. And she said, I miss my family, and I go to this part in, she said, I go to this part in the East Village that has this mural of this one of the Indian gods.
And she said, I want to use it. It's an icon in my culture, in my religion. I said, in what context now? What could that be then? Well, where would you take it to a higher level, to a different level? So that's a found image, but then make sense of it for something else. It's like you have to reevaluate what that means, that visual, right? That's a mural she found, and she said, "Oh, I got an idea. I'm going to talk about public art in India." So then I have to go back and look back at what my cultural significance is, because this mural done in America, in New York, is not the same as a mural done in India. I said, there's the difference. So I think because I'm not totally American, I'm not from America, I think my gift and my sense of understanding of a different culture is very acute. You know, I really, even this morning, you know, when I was reading the roster of my students' names, I try to read it and get the pronunciation right. Because when I show up in my first class, I have students whose names are from all over the world. And I say, can you tell me how you pronounce it? Because I want to make it right. So all of those, I think, cultural connections are important that go beyond language, beyond an understanding of, you know, I don't speak the language, but I try to understand the language or the culture. In fact, my son, the younger one, in fact, that's what I was telling my students earlier, that I didn't teach him Tagalog, my national language, because I was lazy. Because my husband's American, so I thought, you know, I'm like the only one like talking to a wall. Even if this kid is like 2 years old, they're looking at me, huh, what are you saying? So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to talk to you in English. So I gave up. And my son, now, he says, you deprived me of your language. So I'm going to get even. So he studied 10 languages. Tagalog is one of them. But, you know, he's like, he only knows languages that are not, what's the word, Latin. He only studied Japanese, Arabic, Russian, Korean, Chinese, Hindi, but languages that are based on script. And I asked him, I said, what goes on in a brain like that? And he said, I don't know, I just like languages. Icelandic, I don't know. He's like studying all these, you know, like obscure languages that nobody will really use. And so he said, and then I realized what he does have, like me in a way, he has a very strong visual memory. And he can memorize shapes. So that's language and visual at the same time. So when I see words that are in another language, I said, what is this? I saw this at the Venice Biennale. Mama, that's Armenian. How do you know? Okay.
What happened?
Okay, it's telling us to leave.
I don't think it's censored. I think it's just the electricity is gone. Yeah, the electricity is gone.
Did I do something?
Maybe.
What is that? No, you did not. Did you move? Because there's good light.
Right or center? The top. No.
Yeah?
Where are you? Which one? The top one?
Top right. Sorry.
Top right.
He left.
Top right.
Try top left.
I just hope I'm not changing elevators.
Right, it's off.
Lucille,
Yeah.
you know that. They're changing generators.
Yeah, no, I know. Because that happens at the hotel.
You know that now.
Yeah, that happens at the hotel.
Oh.
I just hope I'm not in
Are you recording? I'm recording Ahmed. Give me a push. Just come over something else.
Okay, I think I more than answered your question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anyone?
Just curiosity. I can scream.
Don't scream.
I'll politely. Two? Is it wrong time?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Everything you've shown us, you've designed is in Latin. Latin.
Yeah.
Latin text. Have you ever, or do you intend to design in any other?
I've done it because it's important. Okay. So I've done pieces for the Filipino community in San Francisco.
That's what I'm going.
But I think the more important question is that, and I'll tell you a story. When I was giving a lecture in Los Angeles many years ago, there was a question asked of me from the audience, and this man said, when you see work by Japanese designers or Chinese designers or Arabic, there's always the characters, right? So it is unmistakably a result of their culture. And he said, but I'm from the Philippines, but I grew up in America, and you're not using the language of the Philippines. And I said, so I found that he was like confronting me with this question, because we have Tagalog words that are also Latinized, right? So I can tell you what those words are. You can spell it. But then what I asked him in return was that, did you want proof that the designer of all that work is from the Philippines? And how do you know? What proof do you want? Do you want me to write it in like this not Arab, but we have this, which is called Baybayin, which is this ancient script that is no longer in use, but it's, you know how it is, like a new wave of nationalistic fervor. It's like, forget English, forget Tagalog, we gotta go back to the pre-Hispanic times, for the, how can I say, indigenous culture, etc. And so I look back on that and I appreciate it. But more than anything, what I want people to understand is that the work that I have is the way it looks because it was done by somebody who spoke several languages. And that the idea of complexity in language and even meaning is derived from the fact that my background is really about paying attention to language. So I asked this student, turns out he was a student at UCLA. I said, so do you want me to put palm trees on my poster? Do you want me to put tropical colors, or something? So those are easy marks, but I think the deeper connection is the fact that you need to understand why my work is the way it is. Because an American will not design that way. Will not, because I am a product of my culture, and my culture is multicultural. So, that's
Abe has a question here.
Abe, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I can ask the question. She'll go.
All right.
I can hear you.
In Princeton, what else do you teach besides the Parsons? What else do you teach besides the mapping? The north-south.
Oh, I teach that. I give that to my students as a kind of warm-up project.
But what I mean is like as courses or like the challenges you give your students to let them grow. What type of trajectory do you want them to go through?
Well, those examples that I gave. So I teach many different classes, graduate and undergraduate. So I'm a thesis advisor in one. I do visual culture seminar in another for grad level. But then the two classes I'm teaching now are, one is called Capstone. So this is a course that is the terminal course for students who are career changers. So they come back to school, but they have previous professional lives, right? So what are they looking for? They're looking for a quick trajectory so they can get a job in design. Right? So they need to know, it's like we're compressing 3 semesters so that when they come out, they have the professional wherewithal. So here I am, I'm the capstone teacher. So that when they come to my class, I ask them day one, okay, you came back to school because you wanted a different path. So I want to ask you, what did you do in your former life? And why are you back in school? Because this is not a cheap thing. You know, education in the US is very expensive. So I call it elective surgery. You didn't have to, but you did. Right? You have a baccalaureate, you have a professional life. Why? So one person comes and says, "Hi, I'm actually a veterinarian. I'm an emergency room veterinarian." I said, "Wow, how long have you been doing that?" 5 years. "So you have a degree in veterinary medicine?" "Yep." "So why are you in design school?" She said, "You know, Lucille, let me just tell you, the highest percentage of suicides among doctors are among veterinarians."
Oh my God.
And I said, "No way. How can that be?" She said, "Lucille, when people bring their pets to me, they're at the end of their lives. So just imagine, I am dealing with people who have these strong, we all know, you have pets, you know what I'm talking about. This is a part of your life." So she said, "I'm tired of it." So here I am, I'm thinking, she's going to graduate in 6 months. What am I going to teach her? And she's a veterinarian by training. What about you? "Oh, I'm in the Foreign Service. I used to work in the State Department." "You are?" "Yeah, I lived in the Middle East. I lived in, whatever, Europe." So I'm confronted with students like that. Maybe different from you. They have these lives, and I am concerned about how do I parlay the projects that I'm giving them so that when they go out into the real world, they're not just like designers. It's okay. You know what it is. You know the foundations of what design does. But then these projects that I give them, like, make them think. It's about close observation. It's about making a connection. It's not about looking in your laptop right away. So when I tell them, "You walk. Can I ride my bike?" "Sure." "Can I ride the subway?" "Why not? As long as you hit the terminus. And then come back." And then so for them, it's like discovering a new language, really. So these projects for me that I give, like that north, south, east, west type of thing, is a preparation for them to open up their brain. So when they say, "You know what, Lucille, let me be honest with you. I'm not going to show my work that I did in your class in my portfolio. I'm not going to get a job with that project I did on the north side of whatever, riding a bike." I said, "Doesn't matter to me. I don't care what you put in your portfolio. The important thing is that your brain has been kind of like adjusted, And so the evidence, so even I tell my students, you being one of them, the evidence of what we've done yesterday or today and tomorrow will not show up in your work right away. It's not the kind of thing you will wear on your sleeve. Say, "Hey, I change overnight. This is what I think now, thanks to Lucille." No, I'm not expecting that. But what I can give you is that possibility. And I said at the end of my presentation, relevance and longevity. Relevance is understanding, doing things that this will be gone. In 40 years, this will be gone.
Yes.
Because Layla and I, when we were students, we didn't have this. We didn't have this, but how come we're still designers? So 40 years from now, you're not going to have this. So the projects are not like this immediate thing, like, "Hey, design a website. Okay, design an interactive video, or design this, the UX UI kind of thing right here." My students do that. They give me projects that are like that, but then I'm the one that critiques that, and then just say, "What is missing? What is missing in your work?" And so they're designers, they're typographers, they've done all of the stuff that we do, except for the veterinarians, right? But, for them it's like new knowledge. And then it turns out this veterinarian was doing websites, right? She wasn't formally trained. She was like doing it on her own. HTML, why not? Open source, okay, I get it, right? You can learn it. But then she wanted to go to school and just say, "I want to be taught the formal language of design." So, okay, I get it. But don't turn your back on who you are and what you did when you were in this other life, in this other profession. So one of my projects, as I said, is that thesis project. And that project is the one with the 20 images and then cut down to 10, and they are just blown away. We are now in midterms. In fact, that's why I'm here, because we have midterms this week. They meet me one-on-one and they just say, Lucille, I had no idea that those 20 images cut down to 10 will give me a concept. Will give me a concept. That is my terminal project, capstone. So I know that this project, so on one hand, I'm doing that. On the other hand, I teach a class called University Design Studio. And I started in 2014. And the reason I started it was because I told my dean, I said, is there a way I can choose my students? Because I don't want flakes in my class. I want students who are serious and he said, Lucille, this is undergrad, you take whoever signs up. You have no choice. Okay, that's good. Okay, I'm gonna create a class then, where I can select my students. But you can't do that. This is not graduate level. Undergrad. Take everybody. And the maximum in the class is 15. Oh, okay, here's my class. I'm gonna create a class where we work on real projects for the school. We have clients, we have deadlines, and we have real projects. So, I want to select my students based on their portfolio, based on what they say. Are they articulate? Because if they're standing in front of the client, I don't want them to be mumbling. Designers have to be articulate. So, you have to write a letter of intent. You have to send me 10 images on a PDF. That's it. 10. I don't want more than 10. If it's more than 10, I'm not gonna look at it. You wanna send me links? Go ahead. And so we go so since 2014, how many years is that now?
Almost 9 years.
Okay, 9 years. We have clients who are the members of the school, the president, the provost, who was it? I think Noor was saying somebody designed your logo and stuff like that. We do things that are fun. So we do things that are for like fundraising events. And we have people in our office at the new school. We have one floor that is a marketing floor. They have 2 designers, 3 designers, writers, social media people in this one floor. They come to me and they say, Lucille, we want something unusual. Because we work for the school, we need to conform to the branding system that Pentagram did. But your students, they can play. And I said, thank you, because you're not paying them, they're paying us. They're paying us to be experimental and to be thinking about new ideas. So I'm not gonna take projects from you that are like prescriptive. So when they come to me, they say, Lucille, I have this idea. Marketing person, right? Provost comes. I have this idea. Can your students do this? I said, how much latitude do we have? Well, I said, no, I'm not going to take that project. Sorry. And so when they come to me, they know. They're going to get, woo. In fact, to the point where, so I can only take, like my maximum is 8. My clients are like, Lucille, every time I leave your class, students work so well, and I don't even know what to choose anymore because they're all good. I said, well, you have to choose one. Oh, maybe can we choose 2? I said, it's up to you. But can we hire them afterwards? You can hire them as long as you pay them. I don't want free internships. So when you are in my class, they're doing it for free. Then when they get out of my class, you hire them. So anyway, it's a stepping stone.
Thank you so much.
It's done. Okay.
Thank you.